Hi, this is Father Barry. I've been doing a study on the cross of Jesus, and represented in crucifixes that we have in our homes, like the one here in my home chapel. I've been looking at some of the crucifixes that I have in my home, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about it. So on most of the crucifixes, you see INRI on the top of the cross. And that stands for Jesus Nazarenos Rex Iudeorome. And it really just means Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And it's written in Latin. In John 19:19, it says that this Pilate had them inscribe this over Jesus on a little plaque. And it was written in 3 languages, verse 20 says. 3 languages, that here is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Jesus, that's his name. Where is he from? Nazareth. Nazareth is a place of mostly his association. And King, Rex. So Rex, the word for king, and of the Jews, Iudeorium, and the Jews. And he, interestingly, is the King of the Jews. What Pilate wrote was to mock Jesus. And yet, Jesus is the King of Kings. He is the forecasted one, the anointed one. King David had awaited the true king to come from heaven, the anointed one, God himself, as one of us on the earth, and truly then as king. And that's what it says in the inscription over Jesus. So that's why many of the Catholic crucifixes have this up there. He's King of the Jews. He's King of us all, of course. He is a Jewish man, the Jewish Messiah, but he came to save the world. See the hand there? It's almost like saying, here, choose me. I will represent the human race here. It's like a hand up in a classroom saying, oh, I've got the answer. We also have some of the bloodiness of Jesus on this crucifix, which I think is appropriate. Too many of the depictions of Jesus is cleaned up. That's why I think the movie The Passion of the Christ was much more accurate in showing Jesus as bloodied. Most of his skin would have been torn off in the scourging, so even on the cross he would not have looked this good. As we take a look at the crucifixes that I have in my house, here's another one, and there is the inscription over the grave. You see that? INRI. And so this crucifix is down in my bedroom. And so in this one, we see Jesus wearing a loincloth, and in most of the crucifixes, they have a loincloth on them. And a loincloth is called a perizoma, and it is something that would have been worn over the loin, the genital area. And it's said that in a church in Aden, Germany, in the Cologne area, that they have the loincloth of Jesus there. Well, that would be fascinating. Now, the loincloth is something that could have been worn or may not have been worn. They were stripping Jesus, as we know in one of the stations of the cross. They would have removed likely all of his clothing. But in depicting Jesus historically and artistically, they didn't want to be as graphic, so they covered up his genitals. But the nakedness of Jesus kind of goes back to the nakedness of man and the nakedness of Adam. And so Jesus will come, and naked, unashamed, he will present himself as the innocent sacrifice on the cross. And so the loincloth, though, is on there, and I've always liked that it is there. I'd be distracted if it wasn't. This is another one of the crucifixes we have here in the house, and it's what I use as I celebrate Mass in the house on this altar here. And so you can see that it's ready for the next Mass to be celebrated. And one of the traditions I've done in my life, especially starting about 13 years ago, is that I would put a cross on the altar to look at, and then after so many masses, when I felt inspired by the Lord, I would take that cross and I would give it to somebody. And I'd say, here, keep this cross now. It's been on the altar for many masses, now it is yours. And then I get another cross, a simple one, like this one that you can buy like at the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, or in a Catholic bookstore like the Catholic Information Store in DC. And I pick up another one and I put on the altar. Now, in the Church of the Resurrection, we actually have a nice stand-up crucifix that is standing up and facing toward the priest so that he can see it better. It's not just laying on the altar, but it's actually standing and facing up toward him. So I've used that mostly in my time in the parish. And that one will always stay right there on the altar. And so that's it, my meditation on the crucifix today. And I'm really inspired because I listened to Pope Francis speak in the last 24 hours. And he talked about the blessing that it is just to look upon a crucifix and to pray. There's a great blessing in this object of our faith. There's one other thing I'd like to add about the cross, and that is I've got to celebrate Mass with a piece of the true cross a few times. There is one here in Maryland, and it's associated with the one that Father Andrew White brought over with the Ark and the Dove and the founding of Maryland in the first Mass they did. And when they do celebrate Maryland Day, they often bring the piece of the true cross from where it's usually kept, somewhere else in Maryland at a Jesuit place. And then I get to celebrate Mass with it right there on the altar. Now, back in the Middle Ages, some people had claimed to have the true cross. And I remember it was John Calvin, the Protestant breakaway leader, that said there couldn't be so many true crosses. As he said famously, if they took all the pieces of the true cross and put it together, it would make this huge ship. But turned out he was wrong. Somebody had gone and found out all the claims of the true cross, all the pieces of it, and he said, take it together, and even times 10, it wouldn't make even 1/5 of what the true cross is. And so, turns out that perhaps we do have many pieces of the true cross still in existence. You can find out the story of the finding of the true cross if you ever look up the story of St. Helen and her trip to the Holy Land, the mother of Augustine, and her adventures there in bringing back some of the artifacts of Jesus. God be with you.